Now, making an EV is no mean feat, but when it means making an electric motorcycle, things become even harder. And that's the task that Ultraviolette has taken upon itself. And this is their first electric motorcycle, the first one in its production form. And this is what we are riding today. This is the Ultraviolette F77. Hi, my name is Dhruv Paliwal, you're watching autoX, and today we are riding the Ultraviolette F77. Now, the one place each and every motorcycle needs to do really well is looking good. And I think in that department, Ultraviolette has knocked it out of the park with the F77, because this motorcycle here looks fast even when it's standing still, and that is the highest praise I can confer upon it. Now, coming back to design elements, first of all, I really like this vertically integrated headlamp over here. It's an LED unit, you've got reflector panels on the inside, and these three bits over here, they act as the DRLs. Second bit that I really like on this motorcycle is the fact that the suspension's been covered with this plastic cover over here that really gives it a more beefy, a more chunky look at the front. This motorcycle actually looks a lot more faster than it really is. Now, as you step towards the side, I like the fact that Ultraviolette has done a good job of integrating the cluster. It's not been overdone. There's not a lot of cowling around it. It's there, it's in your vision. It's pretty easy to read. It's pretty good to look at. And there's not a lot of clutter happening. I think that's been a key point for this design by Ultraviolette. The next bit here, obviously the side is fully covered. Obviously that's where the battery is inside. And I really like this entire bit on the side being done in the body color. It gives this bike this mass appeal, this really big presence on the road, and everyone's gonna be turning and looking at this. Now, the keen-eyed among you must have noticed this fin right here. Yes, it does have aerodynamic properties. It does deflect the air, but it's got another job, and that's there's a metal bracket inside, which when the motorcycle, in the event of a crash, acts as crash protection for the motorcycle and for the rider as well. Now, let's step here towards the rear, and this is where the shape really comes into one. It really all comes together. First of all, this stepped seat, there's no storage underneath the seats. Yes, you can open it, there's a key slot here, but you cannot store anything. But this step seat, the design, and even the contouring that's been done on top of it looks really nice, looks really cool. And the second thing here is the fact that the entire rear just comes together. It just comes here and shapes into one narrow element over here, and I think that's the really beautiful bit. This motorcycle looks chunky at the front, but when you look at it from the rear, it doesn't look too bulky. It's got this really sleek appearance going for it, and that's a balance that most motorcycle manufacturers are not able to attain, but Ultraviolette seem to have. Alright, now let's talk about the ergonomics of the F77, and I actually really like them. This is how you sit on the motorcycle. First of all, yes, it's a sporty position. Once you're in the tuck, I think you do have to bend forward a little. The bars are a little low down and the foot pegs are rear set. All of that means that this is a motorcycle that likes to be hustled, and that is the case. But I think the way they have Ultraviolette have gone about managing this position, about creating this position, I think it works in the sense that if you're not riding too long, you're going to be comfortable in this position for quite a bit. I've been riding it for like say 2 hours now, and I'm yet to feel any strain on any part of my body. So that's a big plus. Now, we also have to talk about fit and finish, the levels of quality here, because Ultraviolette is a first-time motorcycle manufacturer, and obviously these things take a bit of learning. And on that front, I have to say I'm really impressed, because the switchgear quality feels really nice. There's no loose switches, no rickety switches anywhere, and the feedback from these switches feels really good. Apart from that, even the body panels, the tank panels and everything, they seem to be quite in place. The gaps in the panels seem to be uniform, and overall it looks like a well-built, a well-finished product. And with that, let's go and ride the motorcycle and then see what it feels like. I'm done riding the Ultraviolette F77. I've ridden it on public roads, I've ridden it on a track, and here's what I think. I think it's a great motorcycle. Here's why. First of all, the electric motor, you get 3 riding modes. You've got glide, you've got combat, you've got ballistic. And honestly, ballistic is the one you want to be in most of the time if you're going for your pedal to the metal, throttle full response, whatever. If you want to just send it, ballistic is the mode. You can really well work in combat also. Glide, the top speed gets limited to 80, but the response is still great. So all three riding modes are very, very usable. As far as range goes, I really don't want to comment on it. What Ultraviolette is saying is you've got around post more than 300 kilometers of IDC range. IDC doesn't really hold a candle in the real world from how I was riding ballistic mode. If I were to get anywhere between 120 to 150, I would be really, really happy. But let's not talk about the range here. Let's just talk about how this motorcycle is to ride, because we've not really ridden it in a manner where we can talk about the range. So as far as the riding goes, the suspension, beautiful. I think there's an underlying stiffness to the entire motorcycle, but that initial bit of travel, there is pliancy in that. So all your minor stuff that's on the top of the road surface with a small undulation, they just get taken care of like that. But out in the real world, when we were riding in Nandi Hills over there, all the bumps and stuff, they were taken care of really, really well. The front has a lot, it just forgives you a lot. Go into any kind of pothole, it just damps it so well. The rear is where the limitation is. I think the rear is set up a little more stiffly, and that means that if you go into a big pothole really hard, that's when it hurts. But apart from that, it's a great setup. Next thing are the brakes, and I think they have to be one of the best things on this motorcycle for me. First of all, the rear brake, I'm kind of not using it because the way you're sitting on this motorcycle, you end up not reaching for the rear brake quite often. The front brake, it uses synthetic pads, so that means you've got a lot of stopping power at the front, and you also got a lot of feedback coming in through your lever. It tells you, it lets you know what's happening down there, and that's really, really assuring when you're riding an electric motorcycle, because let's be honest, feedback here is at a premium. Apart from that, I think I want to talk about the tires. The tires are such a beauty. MRF tires, they've worked with Ultraviolette to make them specifically for this motorcycle. They might release it for other motorcycles as well, but the point here is these tires haven't given me any reason to complain whatsoever throughout the day. And I've been riding this motorcycle like a maniac, especially out on the track. I was leaning it to a point where I was thinking, okay, now it has to give, but it just didn't. The tires were as brave as I was today, and that really says a lot. I think it's a very reassuring feeling having really sticky rubber underneath you. Combine that with the really good braking feedback, the braking force that you have available, and this makes for a very, very nice handling package. Now let me also quickly show you the cluster of the F77. Well, over here you have this neatly designed cluster. We showed you the overlay earlier, but this is what it actually looks like. Now obviously you've got here this button here. This is how you change the riding modes. The motorcycle is on a stand right now, so it won't do that. But this is basically your main setup. These are the buttons of how you control the screen. This is your menu button. You've got these different menus, my F77, navigate, trips, settings, performance. Performance basically allows you to choose the amount of regen and the amount of ABS, like if you only want it from the front or the front and the rear at the back. And speaking of regen, let me just talk here. If there is one chink in this motorcycle's armor, it's the regen. They only have 3 settings of regen available right now, but they are very, very mild. Ultraviolette says they're testing out 10 more settings of regen, 10 in total, I'm sorry. 10 in total including these 3, but they are yet to make it to the production motorcycle. And this motorcycle, I think that's the only thing, it needs regen, because you have no engine brake feel as this is an electric motor, and in the corners you kind of expect that natural deceleration that you've been all used to. Even in EVs there is regen. That's one thing that is missing for now. Apart from the regen, obviously the screen doesn't have a lot to offer. You've got your battery stats and stuff like that. It's very well laid out. It's all utilized. It's not a very big screen, but what Ultraviolette has done is they've utilized the space on offer really, really well, and that makes it work. Well, now's the time when I have to sum up this video, and for starters, it's a great motorcycle. As an electric motorcycle, it's a fantastic one. Yes, there are a few chinks in its armors here and there, like the regen for example, but that can be sorted out through over-the-air updates in the future. And honestly, people had ridden a prototype of the F77 a little while ago. At that point of time, it felt like it was not a finished motorcycle, but this feels like a finished motorcycle. In fact, this is the one that customers will be taking deliveries of very, very soon. And if I was one of them, I would be really, really confident. One question still remains up in the air, and that's the range. Being an electric and all, we've not yet ridden it in the real world, how we would generally ride a motorcycle. So we can't really comment on what the real world range would be like. But apart from that, if you can live with that bit, for everything else, for what it's worth, it's a great motorcycle. Thank you so much for watching this video, and until the next one, goodbye.